Look, I want to introduce you to sort of a friend of mine. Chris Taylor's always got his ruler out. He's always measuring it. We're good friends. We've done a lot of work together. We've helped a lot of people. And Chris is a real solid person who knows what he's doing, and more importantly, he knows why he's doing it. So, Chris Taylor, if you would come forward, please.
I'm not worthy to follow my senior mile, but I have. I'll tell you a quick funny story. As Monsignor mentioned, his mother passed away and I was lucky enough to take care of everything. And her death certificates came in the normal time, 10 days or so. And I called Monsignor, I said, I'm going to be out and about today. Can I bring them by your house or your office? And he said, no, I'm going to come by Sparkman Hillcrest and pick them up. Are you going to be there? And I said, I'll be here for you. So he came by. I went back to my office and got the death certificates. And I looked at them on the way up and I said, I know you know this, Monsignor. I said, your mom was almost 102 years old. And he said, you know what that means? I said, what does it mean? He said, I'm 80 years old and you're going to have to put up with me for another 20 years. He said, thank you for having me out here today and talking about funerals. I'm not totally comfortable in being mic'd up and talking to a crowd. I normally talk to 2 or 3 people at a time, so bear with me. I have 9 things listed. There's not 10. There's only 9 things listed that I would like for everyone to do. When I say be informed of the options, I want you to know exactly what you're going to do when the time comes. I can tell you that some people, and the fact that you're here tells me that you're going to be somewhat proactive in that somebody in my own family, my mother-in-law, God bless her soul, didn't want anything to do with her funeral arrangements. She wanted me to do everything. She goes, I know you're a funeral director, you're going to take care of it when the time comes. I don't want to know anything about it. She told me that when her husband died. So I took care of it when she died last year. But you're here today, so be informed and know what you want and what you're going to do. Here's the key thing. Write it down. Because if it's somewhere in your house or your home where you live, you're going to have it written down and you're going to have the reality of what's going to happen. I can tell you that when I serve a family, the one thing that I don't like hearing from them is, well, I think he or she would like, plug it in, this prayer card or this prayer or whatever. If you have a particular saint that you have a devotion to and the person that's going to make the arrangements doesn't know that, you might not have that prayer card. Write it down. And then just don't put it in a lockbox. Share it with somebody. With your family if you're so close to them, or your attorney or whatever. Here's the key thing. Don't lock it away at the bank, because we might be buried before the bank vault is open, and then they're going to go, oh, she wanted a Blessed Mother prayer card. We just found it out. She's already in the ground. So talk about it with your family. If you're comfortable in sharing that, it's not a delightful conversation, but it's something that we need to do, and we need to share. Monsignor's referred many times to Henry. That's Father Henry Petter, Monsignor Henry Petter. So I would think that Henry knows, and he knows, Milo knows everything that's going to happen at the time of the death. By the way, you're not going to be in the Old Testaments because I'm in charge of the dressing. Here's the key thing. My wife doesn't want to be cremated. I'm fine with cremation, but I'm going to have the same traditional funeral that my wife is going to have, but then I'm going to be cremated, she's going to be buried. Lo and behold, we can go in the same space. If I die before her, which probably is going to happen, then I'll go close to the marker and she'll be buried and everything's good. So you want to decide on the cemetery of where you're going to be buried. Bishop Kevin Farrell was a bishop of Dallas before Bishop Burns. And he said to me one time, he said, Chris, he said, you know, if somebody's cremated, where do you put them? I said, well, sometimes we place them in the cemetery and sometimes they're at the funeral home or, the church. And he said, just as long as they know. That's the key thing. Know exactly what you're going to do. It was talk a little bit about organ donation. You need to be proactive. When a family comes to me and says, Mom wanted to have her organs donated, it's kind of too late. Because the timing was such that you go from organ donation, when you take your last breath, right into the place where the organs are donated, and it occurs. So there's a little bit of paperwork that needs to be done in advance. Here's another key thing. Don't be afraid to ask for prices. And I say that to you because you want to know specifically how much it's going to cost or how little it's going to cost or whatever. We have some people that I spend a lot of time at Spartan Hillcrest that have some significant money and they come to Spartan Hillcrest and they don't want to know what anything costs. I'm of the nature where I want to know what things cost. So write it down and have exactly how much it's going to cost. We'll talk a little bit about consider pre-planning. And the reason that you do is that you're freezing the price at today's number. So if you know that a traditional burial is going to cost, round numbers, $10,000 or $12,000, you're going to freeze that charge at today's cost. So that's a pre-arrangement and Medicaid. Why did I put Medicaid? I'm 67 years old. I went through the Medicaid process a couple of years ago. My wife just turned 65. She said, what do I need to do? And I said, just sign up. I got a friend of mine involved and we're all good. So there's some signing up that has to be done at age 65, whether you're claiming it or not. I'm still fully employed at the funeral home, so it's a little different for me. She's a retired school teacher, so it's a little different for her.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Medicaid or Medicare?
Medicare.
You just say Medicaid, okay.
Yeah, I have Medicaid written down, but Medicare. I need to change that. Know what benefits apply to you. The National Cemetery is the DFW National Cemetery. You can't do anything advanced where it comes to the cemetery at DFW National because they don't want to talk about it at that time. When a death occurs, they want the DD-214. That shows that you served, that you were in active duty at one time, and that's the form that they use. A lot of people don't have that, or some people don't have that. The family knows the Social Security number. There's a back roads way of getting to the information, but it takes a little bit longer. But the death can occur and then will eventually bury. Sometimes we have the funeral, I've had one with, on Senior Island where the funeral was on Tuesday, but the burial was not until the next Tuesday. And the reason is because we had a lot of information to gather and things to do with the National Cemetery, and that's where the gravesite was going to be.
Same goes for the spouse that dies afterwards? The spouse of the military?
That's a good question. If both did not serve in the service, you still get 2 spaces. And so if the person that did not serve in the military dies first, then the husband's going to be buried, the wife's going to be buried in the same space, or side by side, then paperwork is obtained from whoever was in active duty at the time. But yes, 2 spaces are provided. Speak to the parish first. Why do I have that? The number of times that I go to a parish and the priest says, somebody's come to me and said that we need to be the first to talk to people in the death church. As Monsignor pointed out, the rights that he gives to somebody that's dying, that's a good time to talk about the possibilities of that exist. But we have that down because when we know that the funeral can be and the celebrant's going to be and the deacon's going to do the rosary or whatever, it's all done that way. Q&A. I will tell you that I'm going to have to leave here in a little bit because I've got a funeral to go to at Christ the King Parish. So the cards will be passed out to you. That's got my cell phone number on it. And so the key thing is you're not bothering me. You can call me or text me. If I can take your call, I will. If I can't take the call, I won't. But you can leave a message. But there might be some questions that you're not really comfortable saying in front of a crowd that you want to ask me. Feel free to, because my cell number's on there. If you want to call a funeral home, that's fine. But my cell number's on the card, so you feel free to do that. There is a form that is in your packet that has all kinds of information on it. And that's something that you want to access and use. Here it is right here. This form right here, it's got all kinds of good information on it. In preparing for today, I brought some things that I've used through the years. The first one's Mr. Rogers. Everyone knows who Mr. Rogers is. It's a little pamphlet. It's excellent reading for anybody, but it talks about talking with young children about that. So it even applies to those of us that are adults. This one is called Through Death and to Life. That's a good form or a good read. Now and at the Hour of Our Death is also a good read. What that's got is the order that a priest or a deacon follows for the rosary or the mass, and there's even some readings in there. It's really good stuff. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. All 3 of these are available, shock of all shocks, online. You can get them on Amazon if you want to. They'll be delivered to your house tomorrow or the next day. So if you want to write those down, Through Death into Life, Now I'm at the Hour of Our Death, and Talking with Young Children About Death, Mr. Rogers' pamphlet. Question, yes ma'am.
Yes, Chris, go back to slide 4, please.
Yeah.
Or entry 4. Where you said in reference to organ donation, said there's a lot of paperwork to be filled out. does that mean that just this little item on my driver's license that says, is there more I have to do to make that happen?
The key thing is, if you started the process of, if you started the process of knowing what to do, ask the expert and make sure that you've got everything done. It's amazing when, like I said, when someone comes to us and wants something done, after the fact, they haven't done any homework, then that's a problem. So the fact that you started it, make sure and ask the expert in the field that you're talking about knows the answer.
Well, who is that expert?
What's the question again?
Do I have to do something over and above designating it on my driver's license that I'm a donor?
No. If you've
That's
got
it.
it on your driver's license, but the key thing is that, is your driver's license going to be available to the person that is in control of your estate
Oh.
at the time of your death? And so, I'm sorry?
Just be sure to repeat the questions, Chris. Thank you.
She was talking about if she had a driver's license and she checked the spot on it about the donation of the organ, right?
Yes.
So the key thing is to make sure that everyone knows, don't keep it a secret. But yeah, having it filled out is good.
You got me?
Yes.
Regarding veterans, burial benefits, is there anything like a veteran should do in advance? Should we like apply for the VA in advance?
The question was, if you're a veteran, is there anything that you can do in advance? The key thing is, if you would find the DD 214 and have that available to whoever makes arrangements, it's going to make things smooth, as opposed to, we've got to jump through some hoops. So there's nothing that regarding the DFW National Cemetery, I served a family at St. Elizabeth Seat, and I knew the guy, and his son flew into town. He said, you know, Dad wants to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. And I said, that's in Washington, D.C. He said, yes. He said, when's that going to happen? I said, well, probably 6 months from now. Literally, 6 months from now, because they're so backed up. And this was years ago, before the pandemic ever started. He said, well, that's really good. I said, why is that good? He said, because we'll have a family reunion and everyone will come to Washington, D.C. and we'll have Dad's burial and everything's good. So that's what they did, is they had a family reunion around the fact that they were going to be in Washington, D.C. and the family was all up in the Northeast and they all converged. But to answer your question, make sure that whoever's making arrangements has the DD 214 or a copy of it, and the copy is fine, and is willing to do everything that you want done.
Okay, so like your firm will help us, like the surviving spouse secure all the necessary VA benefits.
The question was, does the firm, does funeral home help secure everything? Yes, we do. But the key thing is, if we've got the forms, we can do. So there's a certain number that we're alerted to call, and we can call it, but everything with a national cemetery is on their time frame. So they basically, we don't tell them when the funeral's going to be. They want to know, okay, here's your options. It's going to be Tuesday at 2 o'clock or Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Which do you want? Well, we've got a possibility the mass is going to be set on Tuesday, so maybe 2 o'clock on Tuesday would be good. So we'll have a mass at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, and then we'll go over to the Dallas National. Yes, ma'am.
When you say whoever's making the arrangements, I guess the family member, is it typically the executor? Because if your power of attorney ends, if you're a medical power of attorney or durable power of attorney, that ends when the person dies. So can any family member come out of the woodwork and make arrangements, or does it need to be the executor? Because the payment and everything is kind of come out of their estate, I would assume.
The question is, who makes the funeral arrangements?
Family-wise.
Sometimes a family doesn't want to make the arrangements, and they've got somebody else that they want to make the arrangements, and they'll empower that person with not paperwork or anything, but that person makes all the arrangements. So to answer your question, if it's a family member, the key thing is that family member was empowered by the next of kin. So the next of kin might be a spouse, but he or she doesn't want to make any decisions. So she'll tell, he or she will say, whatever she says is going to be valid, and I'll sign the paperwork and I'll pay you. So it doesn't have to be the executor, it's whoever the person that is in charge of the funeral. And here's the key thing regarding the cremation. It's along the same lines of this. When a cremation occurs, we have to have the next of kin's signature. I recently had someone that was the next of kin, but was very estranged from the parent that died. And so we could not get that person's signature, so we had to jump through some hoops. The key thing is, we knew, because we have an attorney in the legal department that we dealt with, and we knew specifically who could sign and date the documents so that cremation could occur. Held things up a little bit, yes.
If you don't mind me just chiming in, that document's called an appointment of agent for disposition, and it's really simple to just have one in place. I'll mention that in my talk in a little bit.
That's good.
But it's really straightforward.
Very good.
So,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I have, this is the second part of this. Can you explain the difference or overlaps between the funeral home and the cemetery? Like, if you're gonna get buried out at Calvary Hill, but meanwhile you go to Sparkman over here on Greenville, which a lot of people in this area do. So they work in coordination with each other, correct? Or do you go through?
The good thing is that the same company manages Calvary Hill and manages Spartan Richardson. That's a sidebar. So
The function of each would be, you get your casket and everything through the funeral home versus.
Right. So there's two separate entities, Calvary Hill and the funeral home. The key thing is that everyone at the funeral home knows what the cemetery is doing, and everyone at the cemetery knows what the funeral home is doing. So the timing is such that the funeral home and the graveside's going to be this way, and it's going to happen this way.
Because if you die in the like with my parents, if you pass away in the hospital, the funeral home comes and gets the body
Correct.
to get embalmed and what have you, if you're not being cremated.
Right.
And you bring the clothes over to the funeral home for them to dress them and do that all. Then the body has at the funeral, then it's sent over to the cemetery.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. We take it ourselves. Time's up. Okay. So my card's back there. Y'all receive the packets and my card's there. I'll be here for just a few minutes. If anyone's got a question, I'll be around for about 3 or 4 minutes and it's all good.